This lesson, we're going to dive further into ng if, else, and then. So we start off with using our ng if directive. What if we don't have any data? We need to provide an else statement, much like in plain JavaScript, we have if, and else statements. We can essentially do the same with Angular. Now inside of our expression, we can supply, using a colon to separate the values, an else statement. So what we're going to say is else and then nothing. So we're going to create a portion of the template which is then going to get rendered if nothing is found. And the way that we can do this is by specifying an empty template. Now we talked about ng container, and there's also its very closely related counterpart, the ng template. Now this is more inspired by web components, and in previous versions this was template, but it was renamed to ng template so it wouldn't conflict with the web component specification. So it probably makes sense inside of our nothing to do something like no donuts here, ... So my question now is, when we have no donuts, how do we actually render this instead? ngIf takes care of this quite easily for us. If we do have some donuts, then it's going to render these components. If we don't, we need something else to render inside of here. And this is also another great reason for using this ng container, because it essentially swaps the contents of it without actually affecting any nodes around it. This is actually really easy. We can say hash and then nothing. So this is in fact creating a template reference variable, which is why we already covered this in the beginning chapters. So then if we hit save, go down to our data structure, we can empty out our array. We'll save this out and you can see that we have no donuts here. We can also do things such as tying these in with loading indicators, which we'll come on to as we continue. So this is a really nice way that we can then toggle that particular content. And let's say that we are waiting for a particular request to come back. This is the text that we would see. If we then reassign inside our ng on init, we had perhaps a promise callback or an RxJS observable callback, and we'll come on to this in later chapters and courses. Angular would then go ahead and update the DOM for us, and we wouldn't need to do anything to re-render. Angular is a reactive framework, and it's just going to take care of all of those updates for us. We just simply declare what we want Angular to do, which makes it extremely powerful. Now there's also one more syntax that I want to show you, and this is the concept of splitting both of our templates out. What do I mean by both of our templates? This is kind of its own template, and I should also mention that ng template doesn't actually get rendered. In the same way that a web component template doesn't get rendered, it is simply a virtual piece of DOM that we can then, using a template reference, call upon whenever we need to, such as when an else statement needs to be invoked. So by moving these into their own template, what I essentially mean is emptying out our container and then simply managing our templates below. So by this, I mean that we could say ng template, and then we can add our donut cards. However, when we hit save, this is going to completely error because we need to provide what's called a then statement. This ng container can remain somewhere up here inside of our component template. We can then have at the bottom, and this is a convention that I like to use, is having these templates down at the bottom. They don't become rendered, they're simply called upon by referencing the template variable. So here we could say hash cards. So what we in fact need to do is reference it up here. So we could say if donuts.length, then render the cards, else do nothing. So when we save this out, this then does exactly as we would hope. So this is just a nice way that we can break out our components into different templates inside the same component, and this then gives us a single place that we can perform some complex operations on, and this actually cleans up our code quite nicely. We have this ngIf, which then, based on our donuts length, either renders the cards or it does absolutely nothing. So that's it for this lesson. Let's dive into the next one and learn more about this special ng template, and I've mentioned this asterisk syntax. It's up to you which syntax you want to use, whether you want to break out your components like this. Personally, until things get quite complex, I would probably keep the initial template that's going to get rendered inside of the ng container. But again, that's completely personal choice, but now you have the knowledge to make your own decisions.